This is a Danelectro, it's a DC59, but it's a 12-string version of that rather wonderful guitar. Danelectro, as you may know, are quite jangly instruments to start with. Sticking an extra 6 strings on takes the jangle quotient up really high, which we'll get to when we listen to the sound. But let's start with in the correct bass at the top of the guitar. Danelectro are a vintage reproduction company reproducing their own designs and modifications of those designs from the late 50s and early 60s. They were originally produced for Sears catalogue and are geared towards mass production, so the method of construction and the materials used are quite unique. As a vintage style guitar, you would perhaps expect to find covered tuners, but because a 12-string needs to be tuned and is difficult to tune, or more difficult than a 6-string, the tuners on here are sealed MIDI tuners, which are a lot more stable and efficient than covered types. The trademark Danelectro headstock, the Coke bottle shape, is still there with a little quiff on the top. And you'll notice there's no truss rod cover. Unfortunately, although there is a truss rod, you have to take the neck off the guitar to access it at this end of the neck. So that's a little vintage feature which isn't very convenient by modern standards. Moving on to the nut, which is a metal nut. This is set in a slot in the neck and also screwed into the rosewood fretboard at this end, so this direction. So that makes for great tone transmission and sustain, though sustain is not necessarily something that you're looking for on a 12-string. It's there nonetheless. But the most important part of that metal nut is it increases the jangliness of an already jangly guitar. So the neck, as I've said, is bolt-on, truss rod accessible at the bottom after you've taken the neck off. There are 4 bolts that hold it on. It's a maple neck, finished in the same black as the body and the headstock. Nice smooth matte finish. It's quite chunky as well. It's chunkier than the 6-string Danelectros, for the obvious reason that it's got more stuff to cope with on the front, more strings, more tension. So let's move to the body. The bodies are actually pretty much hollow. They're made from plywood frames and masonite, which I think British viewers would see as a type of hardboard. Now, they were made that way originally because it was mass production, it was cheap, and they were sort of garage catalogue guitars, if you like. They're made that way now because that Danelectro sound is in part made up by the body construction. There are 2 controls: master volume, master tone, 3-way pickup select. There's no mysteries there. The pickups themselves are single coils and they sit within lipstick covers. Now these are so called because the legend has it that they originally were lipstick tubes that were put together over the coils to give the coils some protection. The bridge is a real design epic. It takes the 2 pairs of strings, it takes the pair of strings onto a single saddle and allows you to adjust the action of that pair of strings plus the intonation of the main string and the intonation of the second of the pair individually. So you really do have a lot of scope to get the intonation on this creature right. In order to stop overcrowding and keep the bridge to the normal Danelectro footprint, they actually split the way the strings are held onto the bridge. So the first string of each pair goes through the back of the bridge underneath the screws that hold the saddles. So you've got 6 ball ends sitting along there, and the second pair goes down through the saddle and is strung through the back. So there's no overcrowding, there's no visually nasty double rows of anything going on there. That's a really good piece of engineering. I take my hat off to Danelectro for coming up with it. Other regular features of Danelectros are the strange surfy type of shape to the scratch plate and the tape binding around the edge, which originally was there so that they didn't have to do as good a job of putting the 2 halves together. But I think now Certainly on my Danelectro U2 I've taken that off, but don't take it off unless you want to risk it, because it is still a risk and it may well lift the finish. And it looks cool with it on anyway. Right, so let's get down to the sound of the thing. For those of you that don't or aren't familiar with 12 strings, there are 6 pairs of strings. They're tuned to normal open tuning, but if you listen, there's an octave high drone on the 4 lower strings, and top 2 strings are pairs, tuned normally. You'll need to have a little bit more strength in your hand to hold down the chords, because there is more tension. The Danelectro will help you to this degree because of the chunky neck. It makes it easier to grip, and because of the high fat profile of the frets, that gives you a lot to clamp down on. So let's have a listen to the sound. We're going to start with the bridge pickup, which is almost impossibly bright and chirpy. That's going to cut through the mix for you, either in a live situation or in a recording situation. Take it to I call it the neck pickup, but it's actually set somewhere between the middle and the neck position. A lot more woodiness, a lot more depth there. You'll notice the volume output isn't that high. I've left my amp settings on where I would normally review a standard modern guitar. So the output of these is quite low, so don't expect to be doing any sort of overdriven stuff, and I don't think sort of 99% of the time 12 string suits anything that's overdriven. Take that to the middle position, and my point becomes clear because the output becomes louder. And that, in my opinion, would be the setting that you'd use for most of the work you do with a guitar like this. Okay, it takes a little bit of getting used to. You're going to fluff lots of stuff because each finger is doing twice as much work as it normally does, holding down 2 strings instead of 1. I think it's a beautiful guitar. I'm a great fan of Danelectros. I have a Danelectro U2 which I set up for slide because of that vintage raunchy sound that you get from them. If you're playing in a 60s type band or doing surf music or rock and roll or even country music, this kind of thing will slot right in there. But it isn't confined to those clean and less rocky genres. You can use this kind of thing to double track against rhythm guitars when you're recording. It's a lovely thing and a bargain at the price.